Hello, everyone. At first, let me thank you for coming to my talk. My name is Jiří Vinopal, and I work as a threat researcher for Checkpoint Research. Among my main specializations are reverse engineering, malware research, and detection of advanced threats. This talk, Silent Killers, is about unmasking a large-scale legacy driver exploitation campaign. And it's gonna be a ride, so let's jump to it. A little bit of recap about vulnerable drivers. This subject is around for a while, but it gained much more attention in recent years. One of the potential reasons behind that is Microsoft's effort to still keep evolving and improving Windows security. Because of that, it becomes much harder for the attackers to execute malicious code without being detected. And basically, their perspective is somehow disarm the system before executing malicious code. So they try to disable security solutions. But the problem is that the anti-malware services, a part of the security solutions, run as protected processes or protected process light. And one cannot just manipulate or terminate protected processes from user mode in some conventional way. So their approach is through driver exploitation, using the kernel, that directly leads to arbitrary process termination. Well, attackers are also exploiting drivers for other things to reach capabilities that are not available from user mode. Example like rootkit, minifilter, elevation of privileges, or digital signature enforcement bypass, which mean loading unsigned driver. But the most related to my research I'm presenting today is the EDR killer. There are more ways how to turn vulnerable driver into EDR killer. Well, okay, you can have like kernel write primitive and unhook or remove all minifilter callback installed by some antivirus. But if you have kernel primitive write, it usually goes to something more critical like elevation of privileges. So instead of that, the attackers are trying to abuse normal capabilities available in those vulnerable drivers, like termination of arbitrary process or thread, suspending arbitrary process or thread because sleeping process is happy process, or closing arbitrary process handle because if you close all handles of process, the process terminates. Finally, behind the scene of this research, we are inspired by our previous research called Breaking Boundaries, where we introduced some mass hunting technique for not known to be vulnerable drivers. And we actually turned this mass hunt technique to something we call future-focused hunting rule. It sounds cool, right? Well, with future-focused hunting rule, we are trying to adapt the attacker's mindset because sometimes you are aware of a technique that is not yet in the wild, but it doesn't mean that it won't be in the wild in the future. So we created some kind of this rule for virus total live hunt and our telemetry, where we hunt for potential abuse of not known to be vulnerable drivers. Example of such a rule can be seen here for VT live hunt. This is like a super simple rule, straightforward, let's dissect it. First of all, we are detecting new files submitted to VT, and they must be detected by at least one and more engine as malicious. They need to have behavioral-based context in virus total, and during the execution in sandbox, they need to set certain registries, like registry key in services, where the key must, set image path and type. And we are detecting, of course, the type that are related to driver installation, like service kernel driver, like common one. But the truth is that whenever you are using direct syscall on Windows, anti-load driver, basically you need to set the type, but the type is not something what Windows matter, it doesn't care. So this kind of rule is generic, a lot of false positive you got, but still it's like you get something, but you need to wait. And of course, the last thing, we filter out all samples that dropped already known vulnerable drivers, like LOLDrivers or those drivers that are part of Microsoft vulnerable driver blocklist. And yeah, we filter, and after that, we uncovered a large-scale ongoing campaign where the threat actor was a well-known Chinese APT called Silver Fox. We found that during the campaign, more than thousands of first-stage samples deployed an EDR AV kill module. In real, those numbers were like super large. It was a massive campaign involving hundreds, thousands of different initial stage samples. Where we got from these kind of numbers, well, we found that this campaign was exploiting over 2.5 thousands of distinct variants of the legacy version 2.02 of the known vulnerable driver true site. And surprisingly, some of those drivers that retain the execution context in VirusTotal, they were referenced by hundreds of different parents, which means like that hundreds different samples were dropping just one of the driver, and we found over 2.5 thousands, which means, with simple math, that we have hundreds, thousands of different samples. And during the campaign, they abused Windows policy loophole, exception in driver signing policy, we will dissect that, and they bypassed Microsoft vulnerable driver Blocklist, LOLDrivers, and other common detection mechanism. Final stage, ghost threat, well-known backdoor, and we will analyze it too. Let's check the example first stage sample. This is a behavioral context of the VirusTotal, and you will see that this kind of sample, the initial stage, somehow during the execution dropped a driver. The file version is something, revealing true site driver version 2.02. Please notice the version 2.02. It's like super simple to be missed. Something what happened to us also. And we basically, in this moment, knew that we had samples, some campaign, dropping a known vulnerable driver true site, which is known rockkill anti-rootkit driver, a part of at least a product, something like security solutions. And this driver had already known vulnerability that result in arbitrary process termination, affecting versions below 3.4.0. 3.4.0 is already patched, and there is already proof of concept available on GitHub for over than a year, called True Site Killer, utilizing version 3.3.0. But well, in that moment, actually, we saw that and we thought like, hey, it's just another True Site Killer. Let's leave it. But we got back to that several times, and after that we realized like, hey, the True Site Killer is using 3.3.0 version, and we now have 2.02, which is strange. And we found out that the old legacy version 2.02 is not detected as known vulnerable. And proof of concept is like super simple IOCTL 22E044, bam, and you have arbitrary process termination of protected processes. So in this moment, we were like, hey, let's hunt for more files. So we checked the behavioral files, where the location of the common location where those drivers are usually dropped at VT. And we got to the what is going on moment, because we got different samples, initial stage samples. And they dropped something that seemed to be like same driver, 2.02 version. But when you can check, file version is the same, compilation timestamp are the same, but hashes of those drivers are different. Which was like, okay, cool. And we were, in this moment, we're exactly one good search before insane finding where we found over 2.5 thousand different true site drivers version 2.02. And in this moment, we already knew that we are dealing with something big. And hell yeah, let's deep dive. Regarding the infrastructure and victimology, data across infrastructure abusing public cloud in China, both for hosting payloads and C2 servers. Payloads are disguised as known applications, usually distributed through phishing methods like deceptive websites, channels, and popular messaging apps. Regarding the victims, approximately 75% of the victims were located in China, and the remainder from other part of Asia region like Taiwan or Singapore. Let's check an example of the deceptive website. You can see the domain bank486, and it's just looking like some phishing website luring for the best buy deals. And whenever you click on some of the messaging icon, you will be redirected to appropriate channel, which is again deceptive channel. And it would be just like super cool coincidence that the same domain that were hosting the phishing website was also hosting one of the initial stage samples that were dropping one of the vulnerable driver, the legacy one. Regarding the technique analysis, initial stages. Initial stages involved 3 different stages. Stage 1, super simple downloader, no persistence set for this downloader, and it was just downloading. Stage 2 with encrypted payloads. These encrypted payloads mimicked common image file formats like PNG, JPEG, and others. And also this stage downloaded a variation of the legacy two-sided driver. Stage 2, again, downloader and loader, because it was loading the encrypted payloads, and downloading stage 3, and again, encrypted payloads, mimicking PNG, JPEG, and others. And finally, stage 3, which is the main stage, and it was loading the encrypted payloads and deploying the EDR AV killer module. And after this stage disarmed the system with the EDR AV killer module, it downloaded and executed the final stage, which was ghost thread. And the C2 communication began. Regarding the stage 2, stage 3, you can see the encrypted payloads that were deployed alongside those stages. They were, looking like having common file extension, databases, Visual Studio projects. But in Hex view, they were trying to look like typical file formats, like images file formats. Stage 1, no persistence, but stage 2 and 3 was using persistence through scheduled task and DLL, abusing DLL sideloading. We are talking here about APT, so the target of the scheduled task was set on benign, valid, signed binary. And the malicious payload was executed through DLL sideloading. The library that was sideloaded executed the malicious behavior. And the scheduled task name was kind of common. You can see a lot of these kind of names on your Windows machines, Microsoft Edge, Update Task UA, very often seen in normal systems. So kind of summary regarding the initial stages, we had malicious payloads, encrypted, resembling PNG, JPEG, and others. They were decrypted in memory and reflectively loaded. So the decrypted payloads were never dropped to disk. And decrypted payloads resulted in either 32-bit portable executable or shellcode. But in case of 32-bit portable executable payloads, it was always protected by VM Protect version. Latest version VM Protect of VM protection. Well, in this moment, it's really, really sad moment for the researcher because dealing with the VM Protect is very challenging. So let's check one of the encrypted payload. The most interesting for us is the EDR AV killer module, which is 32-bit DLL utilized by stage 3 and VM protected. Again, reverse engineering, VM protect binaries, very challenging. We don't want to do that, at least now. So let's start with some generic approach, dynamic analysis, capturing the IOCTL communication. So we can confirm, and we confirm, that the IOCTL T2E044, known to lead to arbitrary process termination, was used. So great, we got something from dynamic analysis, but we are researchers, we should go beyond this. And we did. We tried to reconstruct the VM protected code, and we found out it is possible and kind of straightforward because the compiled portable executable, the EDR AV kill module, was not fully protected. Only DLL entry point and the exports. You may have heard that the attackers, threat actors, APTs, or whatever, that they can use protections like VM Protect or Temida because you can very often see samples that are not fully protected. It's not absolutely correct. It's more about, because it's more about how the threat actors operate. Because they work like companies. So different group of people is responsible for programming, source code manipulation and building those samples, compile them. And different group of people is likely responsible for deploying those samples to victims or applying the VM protection. And when you have the second group of people that are applying the VM protection on some compiled binary, and they don't have debug symbols, they don't have map files, they don't have the source code. So, and they are using the VM protect. So when you are using the VM protect on compiled binary without these like debug symbols and others, it can just tell you functions it can protect just by parsing the portable executable structure. And it's just entry point, and in case of DLL, exported functions, because exported function defines virtual addresses. And of course, if you want to add some function to be protected too in VM protect tool, you can actually do that in absolutely opposite of some convenient way, that you need to specify a virtual address of the function that will be added to the protection. So you actually need to reverse engineer the binary, which is like, okay, no, not doing that. And in that moment, at the end of the day, you have something like a damaged or destroyed signpost, but the roads are still there. It means like you may have lost the logic of the execution flow, but the functions are still there. We just need to recover them. And still, the binary is unprotected by VM protect. So firstly, we need to unpack that. Super simple, debug, run, hook, or whatever, and just create a full process memory dump. Why to create full process memory dump? Because we basically needed to find with or go with our own implementation for impulse reconstructions. Again, a little bit recap, we are dealing with 32-bit binary protected by VM protect, and one of the latest versions of VM protect was used. If there are available tools that can help you with some VM protect reconstruction, they are usually outdated, they are not supporting the latest version, and they are mostly tailored for 64-bit binaries. So we need to come out with our own solution, and we, for the imports reconstructions, imports are Windows APIs that are used by the compile sample, and then they are destroyed by the VM protect. So we use IDA Python and Box debugger, and Box is also emulator. And IDA, as a known reverse engineering tool, comes with a Box plugin, which can help you emulate IDA database, which is super cool, because you actually don't need to have runnable sample. You can have just the assembly in IDA database. And as we had full process dump, we had everything. We had the sample, it was unpacked, and all libraries that were needed for the impulse reconstruction or resolving were in the memory. So we used the IDA pattern to automate the emulation. And yeah, we got something like beyond just satisfying result. Let's check it. And look at this beauty. Don't get confused. It's not a source code. It's still the reconstructed, recover VM protected code in IDA. And here we can see the main logic of the EDR AV kill module. It's like some generic routine. Let's search for processes that are defined in a hard-coded list. There are 192 processes associated with security solutions. Once it finds some process that is defined in the hard-coded list, it will try to kill it with the function name kill process. Well, but we actually found out something more interesting that we would not be able to get from the dynamic analysis result, that despite the EDR AV kill module is deployed by stage 3, and the vulnerable driver for this kill module is downloaded by stage 1, we found out that this EDR AV kill module, even though it's chained to the campaign, it's also able to work absolutely independently, because it checks if the vulnerable driver is installed on the system. If not, it will download it, it will install it, load it, and abuse it. And now let's get back to the kill process function, and let's peek. And we can again confirm our dynamic analysis result. We can see device IO control and the IOCTL22E044, which result in arbitrary process termination. Now about the legacy TrueSight driver, why the attackers were exploiting the legacy version of the TrueSight. First of all, the readable available proof of concept, TrueSight kill, which served as a source of inspiration. Secondly, taking advantage of Windows policy loophole. We will get to that on the next slide. And they bypassed with that the Microsoft vulnerable driver Blocklist, and they evade the hash-based detection. Let's dissect each of them. First of all, taking advantage of Windows policy loophole. Is that driver Microsoft signed? No. But it's okay, because it falls into exception in driver signing policy, which means that an end entity certificate was issued prior to July 29, 2015, and changed to supported cross-sign certificate authority. Because of that, we are referring to these drivers as a legacy because they are old, signed by a trusted, supported cross-sign certificate authority, and basically Windows, even 11, the latest version, is able to load them. Second thing, bypassing the Microsoft vulnerable driver blocklist. First of all, it's a built-in Windows protection mechanism that tries to prevent against abuse of already known vulnerable drivers. It's enforced through WDEC policy, and WDEC policy is using different or various attributes to detect those vulnerable drivers, like original file name, version range, authentic hash, flat hash, TBS hash. For us, the most interesting is TBS hash. TBS hash is a hash of certain part of certificate that is, surprisingly called to be signed, and it can also be, understood as a certificate hash that uniquely identifies the certificate, and this TBS hash is used in the WDEC. We can also calculate the TBS hash value on our own using PowerShell command-led new CI policy rule. And when we calculate these TBS hash values for known vulnerable driver through site version 3.3.0, we got like two different TBS hash values. And when we try to calculate it for version 2.2, which is the legacy one abused in the campaign, we got like something like 1D7E and something. And if we check the latest version of the Microsoft vulnerable driver blocklist, we will find out, hey, true site is defined there. The Microsoft vulnerable driver blocklist is trying to protect against true site drivers because it's defined there, and 3.3.0 version is blocked. But the TBS hash value of the legacy driver, the 1D7E, is not defined there. It's missing. And because of that, they can use it, and they can bypass the Microsoft vulnerable driver blocklist. And now, finally, evading the hash-based detection. They generated thousands of variants of the legacy true site driver. How they did it? They altered specific parts of portable executable without invalidating digital signature. So digital signature remained valid. You can actually modify certain parts of portable executable because they are excluded during the signing. During the signing, hash is calculated from PE parts, and some parts that are changed by the signing process are actually, excluded from the signing. An example is checksum, and attackers are doing this in this campaign. They changed 4 bytes, PE and the header optional header checksum, and probably because they got like a little bit over 4 billion of different variants, and it was not enough, so they decided to change also other things, and it was Win certificate structure padding, another 4 bytes. Regarding the checksum, it's we can see the original and modified. It's kind of simple, we all know what is checksum field in portable executable format. But regarding the Win certificate structure and the padding, Win certificate structure is a part of the signed portable executable, and it contains something which is known as a attribute certificate entry, which basically means it contains certificates. And these certificates need to be quad word aligned, which means 8-byte aligned. And if they are not, they are padded by 0 bytes, and this padding can be freely modified without invalidating the digital signature because it's outside of the cryptographic data. And if we check the digital signature with kernel policy, verifying it's valid. We can load it even on the latest Windows 11, even the modified variant. And if we compare the legacy true site version 2.02 with the patched version 3.4.0, what the developer did to prevent the abuse, we can see that the not patched version was basically when the IOCTL terminate process was invoked, it directly went to ZW terminate process kernel function. But the patched version added another check, and it checks if the process to be terminated, if it's running as protected process. And if it's true, the termination is aborted. And finally, regarding the final stage, across all samples, we deeply analyzed the final stage was always a ghost thread. which is a well-known backdoor derived from publicly available source code. The source code is available for several years, and we found dozens, dozens version actually exists because it's open sourced. And each company tries to come out with some super cool name for this kind of variant of ghost thread, so it kind of gets a little bit messy. But the truth is that all of these versions are mostly or mainly used by Chinese threat actors. We can see some typical routine for ghost threat, like detection of some analysis tools and retrieving of new C2 addresses from remote URL. But when you want to actually properly attribute some sample to that you want to be sure that it's a ghost threat, the best way to do it is actually to find out the network communication, decrypt it, and recognize the ghost custom network protocol. We check that, the encrypted is super simple. It's always like a combination of XOR add or XOR sub add or whatever. And if you check that dissected, you will find that it's a variant of ghost threat, and in our case, it was already known as hidden ghost. And final note about mitigation and remediation. Well, we found during this campaign thousands of driver variants that were abused. So basically hash-based detection is ineffective. And for that, you can just use authentihash to detect them all. Because authentihash is different than normal WAL file hash, and it's not affected by the modification that were introduced by the attackers. And of course, at the time of our investigation, none of the drivers were classified as vulnerable, and they bypassed Microsoft Vulnerable Driver Blocklist, LOLDrivers, and other common detection mechanisms. Because the Microsoft Vulnerable Driver Blocklist is built in Windows, we, as a Checkpoint Research, reported it to Microsoft Security Response Center, and it resulted in immediately updated Microsoft Vulnerable Driver Blocklist. Still, we recommend to always manually applying the latest version of the Microsoft Vulnerable Driver Blocklist, because it's usually auto-updated only once or twice per year. And with that, we made it to the end. So I would like to thank you for your attention, and let's leave some space for questions.